my tax bill for a service that I have already been paying for. This appears to be a way to totally change funding for the sheriff and possibly in the future other services for all of Lane County. Each area will have to create their own special levy to bring their level of enforcement up to an acceptable level. 20,000 property owners in West Lane will then be subsidizing sheriff's law enforcement in the balance of Lane County because there will not be a line item in the budget for us. Or are we getting a rebate on what we are currently assessed to support the sheriff? If the residents of Veneta and Elmira feel a need for more law enforcement, maybe they should consider Veneta Elmira Police Department or get annexed to Eugene and have Eugene Police Department coverage. Leave me out of it.
Thank you. And next is Danny Worth.
I'm Danny Worth. I live in Noti, Oregon. I have voted yes for every kind of civic duty that there is for sheriff or fire department or whatever. I'm glad to do it. It's what I was taught to do by my father. But they gave examples in the paper of property values that are way under what I have, and unreasonably, and nobody's going to come up my gravel road 8 miles away and run up and down my road and give me the kind of service that they're going to get in Veneta. Yet I'm going to have to pay approximately $500 a year increase, and I'm on Social Security, and I can't afford that. So if there was Veneta's going to have this for their area, and maybe they wanted to add 20 cents onto me per thousand, that maybe I could have a little better service, so I'm okay with that, but I'm not going to pay $500 a year. I can't afford that. So I don't think they've taken into consideration people that have lots of property and stuff that live outside that have acreage. And I'm not on any kind of a farm subsidy, so I'm going to have to pay the full amount. It's too much money. So leave me out of it. Thank you.
All right. There was 3. Is there another individual who wants to speak?
Well, I'm just observing.
Okay.
I thought so with that paper.
All right. So that'll conclude, I guess, the additional public comment. Your comments will be added to the hearing that we had this morning. And depending on the action this afternoon, it sounds like we may have an additional hearing on February the 9th, 6 p.m. up at Deep Woods. So I would encourage you to, if we move that forward, to join us that evening and, again, state your concerns. So thank you.
When you said that, it sounded like Deep Woods was uncertain.
Well, the board has to adopt the order this afternoon. It's not formal, so I can't speak before it is. We'll find out here fairly soon what it is, okay? So with that, we'll move back to our regular scheduled information, and we'll start with county administration. We have a second reading and public hearing for ordinance 15-09. It's in the matter of amending Lane Code Chapter 2 to create county performance auditor position. We have Shannon Miller with us. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair Stewart. Good afternoon, Commissioners. So there are 2 agenda items today, the first being the second reading and public hearing for ordinance 1509. The second is a lane manual amendment. And I just wanted to mention briefly that both of these policy documents have been developed and recommended by a temporary internal audit committee that met 6 times in 2015. And for a little bit of history, additional history, about a year and a half ago in August of 2014, the board expressed interest in revising the current existing structure as documented in Lane Manual to bring the Lane County performance audit function more in line with best practices. Those policies were last updated in 1986. So in August of 2014, the board had approved an order authorizing the establishment of a temporary Lane County audit charter and Audit Committee to guide the county performance auditor to work to recommend policy updates. And about a month ago, the temporary internal audit committee approved the recommended lane code and lane manual policies brought before you today. So the first item, as mentioned, ordinance 1509 for the lane code amendment. Just wanted to read one section of that policy just to give a flavor of the lane code amendment. It is the policy of Lane County to maintain a performance audit function as a means of providing the Board of Commissioners, the county administrator, and all levels of management with timely analysis and information to assist the county in the control of operations, ongoing improvement efforts, and effective achievement of the county's broad objectives. So I'll end there for that one.
Okay. We have questions or comments before I open the public hearing? Okay, seeing none, I will open the public hearing. I have a list here, but nobody signed up. Is there anybody that would like to speak to this item? Okay. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and look to my colleagues for discussion or potential motion. Commissioner Farr?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The ordinance that you see before you today, 1509, is the culmination of a lot of work which involved two county commissioners. Commissioner Lycan and I were on the temporary performance auditor committee, and we have a number of recommendations that come out of that committee. This is one of them. This is a code change. Along with it are some lane manual changes which don't require the same sort of formal motion that we're looking for with a code change. The subsequent motions will adopt lane manual changes. Also, subsequent to this will be a recommendation for the permanent audit committee. At this point in time, the temporary performance audit committee has completed its work as charged. Completed it on time, and we're ready to move this recommendation before you.
Commissioner Sorensen?
I'm really glad today we're getting around to doing this, and this time I'd like to move approval of the ordinance.
Okay. Second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Further comments? Thank you. Commissioner Farr?
Thank you. The changes are completely noted on our website. If you click View Items, it's highlighted in red. The code changes are very short changes, in addition of Chapter 2.130, and it brings us in compliance with the position, the new office, and sets us in a direction for. It's amazing to me that nobody's here watching this, because this is one of the biggest things I think that we've done since I was first elected to any office. I'm really pleased to work with you, Ms. Miller. I think you've done a fantastic job of guiding the committee and bringing us to the point where we really can put forward a very good product that's going to serve Lane County for a lot of years to come. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments? All right, I would like to add, Ms. Miller, thank you for your leadership on this and for taking on the Lane County position to help us resurrect this position. It's like a lot of things, we probably feel things should move a little faster, but I feel really very good about the diligence that was taking place, the time taken to make sure that we're doing this right, to help you be as effective as possible in auditing the performance of what we do at Lane County and being able to report to our citizens. And I want to also thank Commissioner Lycan and Farr for their involvement through this process, and I know we had Mr. Hidgmans was involved and other staff members, so thank everybody for the work on this and bringing it to where we are today. So with
Just a note for anyone who may be watching, this is an ordinance because it is a code change. The subsequent motion will be regarding a manual change, which isn't an ordinance, simply a board order. So this is the second reading. We had the first reading 2 weeks ago, and 2 weeks ago.
About a month ago.
And because it is an ordinance, because it is a code change, it does require the formal action of an ordinance. Thank you.
Okay. Well, seeing no more work on the motion, I will ask the administrator to Call the roll for the ordinance.
Commissioner Sorensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Farr?
Aye.
Commissioner Lycan?
Aye.
Commissioner Bozevich?
Aye.
Commissioner Stewart?
Aye. All right, passes unanimous. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So the companion component to this item is Order 16-01-12-09. It's in the matter of amending Lane Manual Chapter 3 to revise county performance auditor position and create the Performance Audit Committee. So once again, Ms. Miller.
Sure. So this Lane Manual Chapter 3 revision provides for performance audit best practices, including the position of county performance auditor, the authority and scope of audits, establishing a performance audit committee, and requiring an annual audit plan. I'll just briefly cover a few of the key elements of this policy. There's a section on the authority and scope of audits, and I thought notable was that it mentions the County Performance Auditor's Office will adhere to recognized government auditing standards in conducting its work and will be considered independent as defined by those standards. The County Performance Auditor will also exhibit the highest level of professional objectivity in conducting the audit work. There's a section called County Performance Auditor, and I just wanted to note the County Performance Auditor is appointed or dismissed by a majority vote of the Board of County Commissioners after reviewing a recommendation from the Performance Audit Committee. With regard to the Performance Audit Committee, this is an advisory committee to the Board of County Commissioners and is also responsible for ensuring the performance audit program performs its function. Audit Committee membership includes 5 voting members represented by 2 county commissioners and 3 at-large citizen members. To note under Reports and Procedures section, it mentions the requirement for an annual audit plan to be proposed and approved by the board. And this annual approved audit plan will actually be a 2-year audit plan. So once a year, a 2-year plan will be approved. Each completed audit will result in a public report. And the county performance auditor should follow state archive rules and retain past reports. Currently, that would be 10 years, so maintaining the reports for 10 years. And then the county performance auditor will follow up on audit recommendations as practical to determine if management is implementing corrective action as identified in their response to the audit report findings and recommendations. And then the last thing I wanted to note is there's a section on quality assurance reviews. The audit activities of the County Performance Auditor's Office shall be subject to an external quality review in accordance with applicable government auditing standards by a professional, nonpartisan, objective group utilizing guidelines endorsed by the Association of Local Government Auditors. And then I wanted to mention, I've been looking ahead once, if and upon approval by the board, the next step would be for me to recommend a method, or I guess I'm suggesting that I come back and recommend a method for selecting candidates to fill the 3 at-large Performance Audit Committee positions. And just wanted to mention that one thought I had that I'd like to get feedback on is to bring the temporary internal audit committee together one last time to be the candidate review committee. And I'm open to other suggestions, but that was just something that I was thinking about. And then, if I may, the last time I presented for the first reading on the ordinance, I failed to thank Howard Schuessler for his early leadership and work on assisting the board in bringing the performance audit program back. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Mr. Schuessler for his work prior to my appointment. So thank you.
Thank you. So questions, comments? Commissioner Farr?
Thank you. And as Ms. Miller mentioned, bringing the temporary audit committee back together for a little bit of business wrap-up seems appropriate at this point in time, should the board approve that. Our charge ended in December, So we are actually beyond our charge right now. But as I gavelled out at the end of the last meeting, I did not sunset the committee because we anticipated that we may be coming back with a request for one more meeting. So we are essentially still intact as a committee and prepared to, if the board's pleasure, to come back to make the one final recommendation or set of recommendations. And just remind the board and anyone who may be watching that the temporary Performance Auditor Committee consisted of Commissioner Lycan and initially Sheriff Turner, who was replaced by Sheriff Trapp, by County Administrator Steve Mokrahysky, and by the Budget Chair, Dennis Hidgmans, who, let's see, he replaced Shannon. Yes. When she resigned from the Budget Committee. So we, the committee remains intact. It was a very well-rounded committee, had pretty much 100% attendance throughout the course of its meetings. And hopefully the board will pass this board order. And this is a board order, and it is a manual change, which can be changed at any time by board order, less formal than ordinance. And presume, like the manual, it is a living and flowing document and can be changed as changes are necessary. So thank you very much for the consideration, and thank you, Shanda, once again for your hard work in bringing us to this point.
Thank you.
Okay. Other comments? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve. Let me get down here. Motion to approve Order 16-01-12-09 in the matter of amending Lane Manual Chapter 3 to revise County Performance Auditor position and create a Performance Auditor Committee.
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
We have a second?
Second.
Yeah. And further discussion? I don't believe, does this include your recommendation to bring the temporary committee back together?
I can come back on the 26th with that recommendation, in addition to some other procedural things in terms of obtaining applications from interested candidates and just the whole process. So I can bring that back on the 26th. But I was just looking for some general thoughts or head nod in terms of drafting a recommendation that would include the temporary audit committee.
Okay. Commissioner Farr?
And thank you. Ms. Moore, I presume you'd come back on the 26th with a tentative agenda for the final meeting of the temporary committee and for the board's approval. So, thank you.
Other comments? All right. Well, I would support you bringing your recommendation. I support your recommendation of the temporary committee and look forward to it being a discussion on the 26th. Okay. All right. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Passed unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good job. All right. So we do have 3 items from this morning. Mr. Mokrahysky, are we ready for the 2 in relation to the Fern Ridge?
We are. Staff has drafted the language the board requested. It's been reviewed, as I understand, by Mr. Dingle and approved. So I think we're ready to present it here. Mr. Kyler's going to pass it out to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
We work well under a tight deadline, Mr. Chair.
Especially when your counsel's not even here, right?
Yeah, right.
Sorry about that. For those of you that don't know, I was swept off at lunchtime. I made a commitment to attend the Boy Scouts kickoff fundraiser and invited Mr. Dingle to sit with me. And so, if there's any lack of response, it's my fault. So.
It was also ironic given what the speaker, the topic that the speaker was presenting on.
Yeah. Okay, so Mr. Kyler.
Sure. So I think we've made the changes that came about as of this morning's conversation. I will note that the website does not update until after 2 p.m. So this is still a few minutes away from being absolutely public, but at any rate, the changes we made are on number 7, which has to do with the discussion that Commissioner Bozevich led this morning regarding sunsetting or dissolving the district in 5 years. So that is, we changed the date of the dissolution, and we do have the caveat there that unless continuation procedures are completed as provided in under state law. So there is a hearing that you could choose to have to continue. And then we added item 14, which is that the district would pledge to create an up to 7-member advisory committee, and that the committee would have no fewer than 2 members appointed by the Veneta City Council.
15.
15 isn't new.
Oh, wait, there we go.
Oh, shoot.
So just to be clear, so we added the dissolution, 5-year dissolution on item 7, and then we added the formation of a advisory committee, and that is separate from the budget committee.
And you're going to have to
On 15, we'll have to add
amend
on February 9th,
2016
2016.
at 6 p.m. is there.
At the very end of the sentence, it'll say on February.
Yeah, that's critical. We need a date.
Yeah. Mr. Kyler did all the work on this.
We could just meet there every night at 6 p.m. forever.
Until you guys do.
Until it's dissolved.
Oh, boy. Okay, so
Might end up attending a few weddings that way.
we're going to add February the 9th at 6 p.m. to
PM is on there. It just needs February 9th, 2016.
2016 to item 15. Give you a few more minutes. Does anybody need any additional time to review the document? Just for the public watching today, we had a public hearing this morning in regards to this item, and there was several items that were brought up that the board discussed, and direction was given over the lunch break to add those items or amend the order to what we have at this point. So, Commissioner Sorensen?
Maybe this is needed, maybe it's not needed. What's the significance of the verb will in the statement 14? The Fern Ridge Community Policing District will create an up to 7-member advisory committee, and then there's a shall. They have to have shall, but they will.
What Mr. Clark would say.
They will create it if they want to. They might not create it. But if they do create it, they shall have no, if you remember, I don't know. Is it worth it to change shall to will to shall?
We're going to make that one change if that's the will of the board.
It'll be in my will.
But we could certainly change that second shall to do.
Okay.
Does that business of the city council appointing members to the advisory committee, that doesn't change the governance of the district?
No.
But it does show buy-in on the part of the district for the fact that the city is a big part of the district. Okay.
Other comments?
Is that a fair representation? I'm just asking Commissioner Bozevich, because I thought there was testimony that 65% of the district is Veneta.
I think that testimony was not accurate.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, the city of Veneta only has 5,000 residents.
Okay.
And there's about 22,000 in the district. So I don't think they have 65% of the registered voters.
So they have 5 and there's 20,000, just round number. They have a fourth.
Yeah.
So if they get 2 seats on the 7 members, that's about right.
And the kind of, as we look further, maybe in the next order that actually places on the ballot, we might be able to further describe that advisory committee. I think what was important was to make sure we at least committed to having the advisory committee now, and that there would be city participation. The citizens from the area that are proposing the district had talked about actually having the 2 members appointed by City Council, one appointed by the Lane Fire Board, one appointed that would rotate between the 2 school districts that it covers, Crow Applegate, Lorraine, and Fern Ridge, one from the Fern Ridge Library District, so they're getting various elected boards to appoint people to the advisory committee, and then 2 or 3 lay members. And one of those lay members may come from inside the city limits. So it's not the end of the representation discussion and how that advisory committee will be made up. But I think what was important for now to have the city continue with the co-adoption process was to commit to having an advisory committee and to commit to the 2 members from the city council. From the city council would appoint. It may be their city manager and their mayor. It may be 2 city councilors, but it gives them the 2 seats to fill.
Chair Stewart and Commissioners Bozovich and Sorensen, my recommendation at this point would be to keep that language general, if you will, in terms of flexibility, because it sounds like we're going to ultimately refer part of this language would go on to would be in the ballot measure. So if you get into this and for somewhere down the road they decide to have a different mix of people, you run into the issue of, well, it was on the measure that it would always be whatever, a city councilor and one other person. So that was my recommendation, was to keep it general. It's an advisory committee. It's got 7 members. It's got 2 members from Veneta. That can change with the changing needs of the district in terms of how those people are selected or who those individuals are.
Commissioner Farr.
I just need to say this, that for years and years and years, I had to correct people about Bethel School District. I had to remind people that Willamette High School was the 5th high school in Eugene. There weren't 4 public high schools. There are 5 public high schools in Eugene. I do believe that Bethel School District is included in the special service district.
Yeah, but I believe there's only 1 school of the district that might be within the district, and that's up in Alvador. The elementary, is there an elementary in Alvador?
All the schools are inside the Eugene UGB.
Yeah, they're outside. So
many of the students and parents.
The point was that the schools that will actually have the resource officer in them are the 7 schools from Crow Applegate and Fern Ridge. Although part of the district crosses over, and that's why when the citizens were talking about the representation, they were considering those 2 districts.
Point taken.
Okay. Further comments? So what we have before us is the amended order 16-1-12-07 in the matter of amending formation of the Fern Ridge Community Policing District with the inclusion of item 7, changing to a 5-year dissolution of the district, and then item 14 with its inclusion of creating up to a 7-member advisory committee, changing the word will to shall, and then in item 15 inserting.
Was it the other way around? I think it's changing the word shall in the second
sentence.
sentence.
Will, so they were both wills.
Both wills?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, both wills.
Yeah, 2 wills don't make a white.
Yeah, 2 wills making up, maybe.
Wasn't following the conversation close enough, so we'll go to 2 wills, okay? And then item 15, inserting the February 9th date, 2016. All right. So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passed unanimous. So now it is official. There will be an additional public hearing. There shall be. Okay, come on now. All right, so we got lots of business to do yet today, so let's get on to item E. It's order 16-01-12-08. It's in the matter of appointing a committee of 3 to 5 individuals to draft an impartial, simple, and understandable explanatory statement for the May 17, 2016 voters pamphlet regarding the question of forming a county service district to be known as the Fern Ridge Community Policing District. Again, Mr. Kyler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item is very similar to the item that we discussed this morning, that with relative to the other issue on the May 17th ballot, and that is that the lane code requires that if you refer something to the ballot, that you appoint a 3 to 5 member committee to review a 500-word statement for impartiality, simpleness, and clarity. We've identified a balanced panel here that all reside within the district, and folks have been willing to serve on that committee. Once we have that committee formed, we'll get the 500-word statement in front of them, and then the order. I think this order also does. The order in front of you also requires then that explanatory statement be forwarded along to the clerk as part of the election-related materials that you'll deal with on February 9th.
Okay. So I believe earlier this morning, in this morning's session, we talked about the folks being from this district, and you stated that all the individuals recommended do live in the district. Is that correct? Okay. So any other comments or questions from Mr. Kyler? Okay. Seeing none, I would look for a motion regarding Order 16-0, excuse me, we already approved that one. We'll go back up to the one we're doing. 16-01-12-08 in the matter of appointing a committee of 3 to 5 individuals to draft an impartial, simple, and understandable explanatory statement for the May 17, 2016 voters pamphlet regarding the question of forming a county service district to be known as the Fern Ridge Community Policing District.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It passed unanimous. Mr. Dingle, before you leave, I believe it was announced you didn't have any announcements. Is that correct?
Correct. I have no announcements.
Okay. All right. Then I believe Commissioner's business. Do we have announcements? Any announcements from the commissioners? Commissioner Lycan?
So, Mr. Chair, just wanted to report that tomorrow evening, 5:30 at the Ford Alumni Center, the Governor's Transportation Vision Committee will be here, and they are basically traveling around the state and getting input from citizens that I would say concerned citizens regarding our transportation infrastructure as a whole. This is the entire. They're looking for input for basically the entire system, including transit, bike, off-road, highway. Whatever you can think of. They're really looking for input. I believe at one time, I think he's still on it, but Dave Hauser from the Eugene Chamber was originally on this committee, and I think he still is when Governor Kitzhaber first put it together, and it has since gone on now with Governor Brown. But I believe he may be a member. I'll double check that, but if he is, that'll be good, knowing that we do have Lane County representation that's part of this committee. But anybody's invited. And so it's not specialized invitations. So if a commissioner wants to attend, they're more than happy to. And like I said, they're traveling all around the state and taking input. If there's anything the state needs is a good, strong transportation package. While they tell us it's not going to happen in 2016, I think you're going to hear reps from both League of Oregon Cities and the Association of Oregon Counties actually continue to put pressure on them that you need to do something, even in a short session, to deal with our transportation infrastructure here in the state. So just want to make sure people know that that is happening tomorrow evening. Ford Alumni Center, 5:30.
Okay. Other announcements? All right. Item 9B is agenda team requests and work session requests. Commissioner Sorensen?
We talked about this morning and maybe later the idea that we should maybe update, streamline, improve our process for putting things on ballots, like explanatory committees, kind of get a cookbook together for maybe the public or maybe our own use of how to go about doing this, to help staff, maybe put out a notice so that when we have to appoint these committees, we put out a formal notice so we have actual formal applications, or maybe that be part of the process. I just think it ought to be reviewed by an appropriate committee.
Okay. We have support to have staff work on that item and bring it back before the board. I'm seeing unanimous head nods. Other agenda items? I do have need a little guidance. This morning we were given a list of 5 individuals to recommend or ask that we appoint 3 of the 5 to the Lane County Forest Land Classification Committee. I don't know if we've had a chance to review that, or if we would like to ask a couple commissioners to make a recommendation for us. How would the board? I personally know 3 of them. Great individuals. They all look great. I don't know. Do we want to try to make a motion, or do you want to spend more time on an agenda item next meeting? Mr. Bozovich?
So, like you, I'm familiar with 3 of the applicants, and I think they would form a good committee. Steve Caparata was on the original classification committee, so he brings that history. Lindsay Reeves has been involved with the Forest Today and Forever education programs, and they're involved in bringing people out to their particular property quite a bit. And Sue Bowers has been really pretty involved in the community for a long time, including a stint on the Planning Commission. And I don't know Mr. McDowell or Mr. Lloyd personally, although it seems like their resume is really good, but those first 3 on the list seem to be really strong representations for the committee with good, strong backgrounds in forestry and forest management and small woodland management also. So that I think they would fit well for the classification committee.
Other comments? I would state that the other item comment I would make is it seems to be kind of geographical representation from the south, the east, and the west portion of our county. So I think that's going to be important as they look at pieces of property that's throughout our county. There'll be a person that's probably familiar with all areas of the county. So do we want to attempt a motion to appoint those 3 individuals, or do we want a more formal process? Commissioner Farr?
Mr. Chair, I have no problem appointing the 3 individuals that we all know. However, out of deference to the 2 individuals who would not be chosen, I personally would prefer a little bit more formal process and a little bit more deliberation time on actually making the appointment. What is the term of the appointments?
I believe it's through the life of the committee. This is just one
ad hoc committee.
It's an ad hoc committee put together with a specific purpose.
Excellent. That really, Commissioner, Mr. Chair, that covers my concerns. An ad hoc committee with a relatively short lifespan isn't as critical.
Relatively short. I think it's almost a 2-year process still. So,
I think they'll take half the county and then the other half. So, yeah.
It might be best if maybe staff brings it back under consent with a board order, but I think we can provide the 3 head nods to do that here versus try and go on the fly with a motion.
All right. So with that recommendation, I would ask staff to prepare a board order appointing Steve Capretta, Lindsay Reeves, and Sue Bowers to the Lane County Forest Land Classification Committee member, and bring it back, I guess, at our next board meeting. Okay. Is there any other agenda items or requests? Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just to make certain that you didn't need anything further on Ms. Miller's request for a discussion regarding the extension of the temporary performance audit committee. You don't need any further, you don't need head nods on that. You've already got that as a, for the 26th.
Okay, I think we're good there.
Okay. All right. So with that, we'll do a review of assignments.
So we'll bring back January 26th, item 5C1, that the board asked be continued from the consent calendar today, so that'll come back January 26th. Of course, we have all the items related, or the additional public hearing that was set today for February 9th at 6 p.m. In Bonita on the Fern Ridge Policing District. And then the last two discussions, we will think it's appropriate to have a conversation with the agenda team about the adjustments to the code that Commissioner Sorensen brought up, and I think it should be a relatively simple change there to, as opposed to saying identifying individuals that have stated their support or opposition for a measure, individuals who can be impartial and take that position, whether or not that's the actual position that they have. But we'll work on cleaning that up and have a discussion with the agenda team about bringing forward that portion of the code and any other portions related to the ballot measure process that we think could be cleaned up. And then the last item here, we'll bring forward a board order to appoint the three individuals as noted to the Lane County Forest Land Classification Committee. And I think that's, the board indicated that can be a consent item potentially at the January 26th meeting.
Yep. Anything we missed? Okay. So with that concludes our business for the Board of Commissioners today. I would remind us that we have an additional meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Out at Delta in the Goodson Room, I believe. So leadership meeting for the board. We do, at the conclusion of this meeting, are expected to convene a Housing and Community Services Agency meeting upstairs in the Commissioners' Conference Room. So with that, is there any further business? Seeing none, we are adjourned.
and welcome to the Housing and Community Services Lane County Board of Commissioners meeting, and I'd like to call that meeting to order. I don't see, well, Happy New Year to everyone, by the way. This is our first meeting since the new year. And so do we have any adjustments to the agenda? And I didn't see any public comment list, so any remonstrance or other issues? No? Okay. Emergency business? Okay, so we're down to the consent calendar, and so it would be approval of the minutes, 9/2/15, 9/20, 9/15, and 12/9/15.
I move approval of the minutes of the consent calendar, including the minutes.
Second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Minutes are approved. All right, so we're going to go on to administration, and we have a report from Jacob on the semi-annual implementation review of the 5-year strategic plan.
Great. Thanks, Char. I think Char did introduce our guest, but just so
I'm so sorry. That's okay.
Just so folks know, Dana Woodall is an applicant for our appointed board position, and I just wanted to welcome him to the meeting, and later in the meeting he'll be able to introduce himself. So the first agenda item is for me to give you a highlight of the end of our 5-year strategic plan. There's a lot of materials that you all have had a chance to review, so I'm going to hit on what I think are the kind of high points or the things that I would want you to know, and then if there's anything that you would like to ask me about or stop me at any time if I didn't cover one of the things that you'd like to see. So up on the screen, I can kind of just orient you to this plan, which you're well acquainted with by now. But we have 4 goals in our strategic plan. The first one is to increase the number of affordable housing units. And then we have sub-goals, and in the context of this section, they're broken down by the different real estate projects that we have in our pipeline or under construction. So Turtle Creek, I guess the first one that I wanted to draw your attention to is sub-goal 4 related to the rental assistance demonstration program. So this is a preliminary approval that we've received from the Department of Housing and Urban Development to sell off 112 single-family homes and duplexes, and we would in turn use the proceeds from those sales to build back the number of units that we've sold. And part of the rationale there is you're going to take old buildings and turn them into brand new buildings. And in that same process, you take the subsidy that exists in the current buildings, which is public housing, and you switch it to a new subsidy, which is a Section 8 subsidy. When you build the new housing, obviously we're going to have investors and lenders, and nationwide, the general perspective is that when you switch from the public housing subsidy to the Section 8, it's a stronger subsidy that has a bigger advocacy base because those investors and lenders are so kind of dedicated to both the Section 8 subsidy and the projects that sort of hold those Section 8 subsidies. And I agree with that sort of nationwide side. What I can tell you, though, and the reason why I want to draw this to your attention is that this project is heating up. We will be coming back to the board with some specific proposals to bring back some of these subsidies and to start selling some homes. I had the opportunity to brief the City of Eugene and the City of Springfield staff, and there's some questions and concerns. They've known about this process for a long time, but because it's becoming real, they're starting to want more briefings and they have more questions. None of them have been negative in nature, but just they do have questions. So anyway, just know that that's something that I'll be bringing back and updating you on regularly. Bascom Village, Phase 2, just delighted to report that this project is under construction. We're at approximately 40% completion, and we will be moving low-income families into this property this fall. And as we know, there was a scheduling mishap related to the opening of Bascom Phase 1, and I assure you that will happen on Phase 2, so we'll make sure that it's coordinated with all of your schedules well in advance. But it's just a really exciting project, and the partnership with St. Vinny's is going very, very well. Glenwood Place. So the latest on Glenwood is that we were asked by the city of Springfield to come back to them with a design that maximizes the number of units on the property. Originally, we were thinking we could do roughly 100 units, and we've been able to bring them back a plan that could build up to 150 units over 3 phases. The design that we created does depend on off-site parking. There's very minimal parking on the current design that we have. So we're working in close coordination with the city of Springfield as they develop the infrastructure around the site, and as they think about whether or not they're able to build a parking garage in close proximity. So that's where we are with Glenwood. The Oaks at 14th, as you know, when we had the delay on Glenwood, we immediately pushed on the Oaks at 14th. We were successful in securing the tax credit allocation, and I'm excited to say that we will be breaking ground in 2 months, roughly, in mid-April. Actually, it's 3 months, sorry. The other thing that I'm really proud of is that the community outreach that we've done around that project, and folks, the commissioners have been very involved, especially Commissioner Stewart and Commissioner Farr. And we have an ongoing community advisory committee made up of neighbors and other community leaders, and that group continues to meet, and we have a meeting next Tuesday. Those meetings are very positive in nature, and we're able to educate the community. So that's the Oaks at 14th. I wanted to highlight just the Housing First effort because it's a really exciting partnership between HACSA and Lane County, working hand in hand with Steve Manila and the Poverty and Homelessness Board, which Commissioner Farr sits on. And I really feel like we're narrowing in on a specific plan that will deliver 100 units of Housing First into this community. So I'm excited about that effort. Moving through just some of our advocacy sub-goals, and you all have been a part of some of those advocacy efforts. One thing I did want to highlight, and it's really an omission on our part, which we'll correct on the official update that we'll post on our website. We had tracked how much we'd raised against this $1.2 million goal. For example, in the last 6 months, we raised another $32,000, but we failed to put the cumulative number on that. So I'll update it and then get out a little email to you so you know where we are against that cumulative goal. The one other thing I think is important to point out is that goal number 3 is related to increasing our organizational performance. And the first sub-goal was around the succession plan to replace Larry. But as you read the implementation, I think what you can see and what I've sort of communicated before, there's a tremendous amount of turnover that's happening in HACSA. In the last year alone, we recruited for 34 positions, and roughly 30 of those are replacing existing positions. So when you have an organization that's turning over, over 30% of its employees over an 18-month period, that's just a lot of change and transition that's happening with the organization. It's unprecedented. I've worked in a number of organizations. I've just never seen that much turnover in a short period of time. And with that much change comes a lot of new ideas and new leadership. And with that change also comes, some staff struggle with change like that. So I want you to know, as Valerie and I look across the organization, we are excited about where we're heading. But I can also say that staff are all kind of in shock about how much turnover we're having as an organization. The other thing, as you know, is when that much institutional knowledge leaves, like, Larry had worked with HUD for 35 years, that's just a lot of institutional knowledge as well that's leaving the organization, and we're really trying to get as much of that institutional knowledge on paper as we can during this time of change. One of the things that I've mentioned before, and I'll just quickly touch on it, we are doing a couple different kind of management techniques to increase our performance. Earlier this year, our Section 8 lease rate was down in the low 90s. And the way HUD calculates your subsidy is they will base 2016 subsidy on what you actually did in 2015. And if that lease rate had stayed in the low 90s, our community could have lost up to $1 million of ongoing Section 8 rental subsidy in the community. So I just want to kind of go on record and say that the staff in the Section 8 division, under the leadership of our new division director, Beth Oakes, really solved this community problem, and it was a lot of work, but a big success for us. So in terms of other things I'd like to point out, the other thing that had happened at HACSA was some functions, specifically development, asset management, and capital project functions, were spread across the organization, and they weren't well coordinated. So one of the things that we did is brought all three of those functions into one team under Steve Oakes, our real estate development director. And Beth Gaudet and the capital projects manager, a guy named Kurt Bondere, are really developing what I think is kind of an industry best practices for how those three disciplines work together. Related to asset management specifically, and we touched on this in one of our board work sessions, asset management had been also decentralized, and 5 different people within the organization were doing little pieces of it, and it was not well coordinated, and that I believe resulted in us not paying attention to the envelopes in particular of some of our buildings. And so, as you all know, we have some big rehabilitation projects that we're currently implementing for Sheldon Village, Richardson Bridge, and Laurel Gardens. And as we put those financial structures together, we'll be back here for your approval. So then I think really the next section I wanted to talk about was the housing division, and I failed to put it in the yellow highlight. But the other thing that Valerie and I are working closely on is getting the our housing division to get to a place where they're breaking even financially. You all have approved budgets over the last 2 years that had that division, our second largest division, operating at a loss. And that can continue maybe for one more budget cycle, but we really have to get to a place where that division's breaking even. So Valerie's working hard on that with the team of staff members. They've come up with a number of innovative ideas, and they're being implemented. The last, couple final points. One thing I want to point out, and Valerie's leading this effort, is that we do have an active inclusion council, and that inclusion council is focusing on issues around equity and diversity. And this council is also sponsoring trainings for staff. And related to that, we're really outreaching to organizations in the community that serve populations of color and populations of diversity. And we have a particular partnership with Centro Latino Americano. They're in the process right now of calling all of the Spanish-speaking participants on our Section 8 program and just asking them whether they understand the Section 8 program, and they're also asking them whether our customer service is appropriately calibrated for their second language needs. So I'm really looking forward to getting that report back from Centro Latino and continuing to make make sure that our customer service systems are inclusive and thoughtful.
Jacob, I see Chuck's name is still on two of those committees, is that?
Yeah, that's a really good point, and Shar brought that up.
I called him this morning.
Chuck resigned from the agency, as you all know, a few months ago after many years of great service to the agency and our community. The reason why his name is still in here is this is a look back that will report to you about what we did in 2015, and when we do the 2016, Beth Oak's name will be in place of his as the new division director. And then I just want to go to the last section, which was around self-sufficiency. And self-sufficiency in resident services is going to be a big growth area for us over the next few years. But I just wanted to highlight a couple data points for you. The Family Self-Sufficiency Program is a program that's focused on graduating people off of public assistance. The 15-year average, as you can see, was 6.78 per year. But the team is really dynamic, and they've the last 2 years have been graduating 19 participants. We haven't done this math yet, but when people leave a publicly subsidized program and they go into the community, in many cases as a homeowner, their contribution to the tax base obviously goes from a negative to a huge positive. And we're working on some quantification of that just for the board and other folks in the community. So that's one thing that we're really proud of. And then this for me is really about partnership. Obviously, we're going to talk about the Cornerstone Partnership in the next agenda item. But we have really active partnerships with numerous organizations, and NETCO is one that we highlighted in this section. So I believe that concludes just my highlights of our progress in 2015. And if you have any questions at all, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Shara. Thank you, Jacob. Good presentation. The question I have is on the Glenwood place. So, do you have an explanation of why the city of Springfield wants to, quote unquote, maximize from 100 to 150? Are investors breaking down the door to invest in Glenwood right now? It's not what I've heard, but maybe I'm wrong on that. I just find that interesting because I thought 100 was going to be a nice project. But anyway, do they have an explanation on why they want to increase that?
I think they're thinking about the future, and I think we all have a vision for Glenwood that 5 years from now it's going to be a really great place for people to live. I think they did want us to maximize the number of units, and the way that we've done it is in 50-unit phases. Yeah. So we could start with a 50-unit phase. If there's a demand, we can go with a second and even a third if we chose.
Okay.
The way the third phase is we could even sell off a phase and reinvest that in the second phase.
Okay, that makes sense. 50, 50, 50, potentially. Okay. All right, very good. Thank you.
And then the other challenge just is, I mentioned parking, but the infrastructure surrounding the project, there's also big questions about when that will get into place. And from an investor perspective, until there's clarity on the infrastructure around 360 degrees around the building, they're going to have questions.
I've heard directly from the commercial realtors in the community that have told me flat out that big roundabout in McKay and Franklin, that's going to be the key. So once that's in place and people know exactly the alignment and where it's going to go, that's when the interest will be. And I think the timeline on that is 16 or 17. I'm not exactly sure, but so there's some time. But the 50, 50, 50, that makes sense. So appreciate it. Thank you.
I have a question about Glenwood also. That's affordable housing when it's on built rather than Section 8 or public housing?
The way we've been thinking about it is it would be just affordable housing. However, HACSA could look at bringing some of the rental assistance demonstration units, subsidies into that building. That's a possibility. We also are creating a project-based Section 8 program, so there could be some subsidies in that building.
I'd like to hear you talk more about Project 8. Project-based housing at some point. Not here today, but a question that I had was regarding the parking. The lack of parking on the 150 units. We don't need to talk about it today, but that is an issue quite often when low-income housing or subsidized housing is developed, as the neighbors surrounding say, well, the parking really flows into the neighborhood. And I'm certainly have your eye on that. And I know that a lot of the Home Forward projects, like the Martha Washington Forum, doesn't have any parking at all, and like 108 or 115 units up there, something like that. So it's something that can be done, just as long as we all go to it with eyes open, understanding what the challenges are there.
Depending on what happens with the parking garage, it wouldn't be a big stretch for us to redesign in such a way that the parking could be on the first floor of it.
And I hate to displace housing with parking if it's not necessary. But that being said, be aware of what happens around. And the only other thing I'd like to point out is up at the very top, you talked about the Hope Loop. Let's see, the sub-goal number 2, Hope Loop property. Just a tiny little bit of historical context on that. The first 4 houses, I believe, in Hope Loop, when we built the new Jerry's store in the location that it's in, there were houses in place there, and they were moved over to Hope Loop, and those houses were repurposed rather than bulldozed. So it's a great use of reuse of property, reuse of housing. And bearing that in mind, as we sell excess properties, it may be something that the Property and Homelessness Board may want to talk about, is can some of those be repurposed as some of the SRO potentially, and municipal could go down the road. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, then we're going to move on to Order 16011201H in the matter of approving further due diligence of a formal partnership between AXA and Cornerstone Community Housing.
So, as the memo highlights, this partnership has been a long-standing discussion between Richard Herman and myself. And then over the last 3 months, we've brought in senior leadership from both organizations, and we've been updating both of our boards. The consensus of Richard and myself is that there is some strong possibilities here, and we are asking, or I'm asking on behalf of AXA for your approval to move forward with the due diligence process. There are still a lot of complexities related to a formal legal partnership like this, so it's certainly not a done deal in my perspective, but there seems to be enough benefit to both organizations to kind of step into that next level of due diligence. I would characterize the next level of due diligence as more financial in nature, more legal in nature, and there are some procurement questions that we would need to look at if there was money that moved between the 2 organizations. So for me, we've talked a lot about the positive aspects of the partnership, and now we need to get into some pretty serious and detail-oriented due diligence. So I think I've briefed you long enough that I won't really go in much more detail. I did attach the board memo that I brought to a work session in early December, just so you have some background information to refresh yourself. You will note that the board order asks for formal approval to move forward with the partnership, and this memo also asks for one of the HACSA appointed board members and one of the HACSA elected board members. So that could either, the elected board member, could be established today, or once we kind of lay out what the plan will be and what the time commitment would be, we can come back and at that time get one of the electeds to volunteer.
Any questions or thoughts?
We have an order before us. It's not numbered. Unless I'm looking at the wrong number.
It's numbered.
Okay. It's numbered in the agenda. Oh, it's numbered in the agenda.
Chair, I'd like to move approval of Order 16-01-12-01-H in the matter of approving further due diligence of a formal partnership between Housing and Community Services Agency and Cornerstone Community Housing. Just like to say, I think this is a really great opportunity for us to partner and further this housing work in our county. They're doing great things along with us doing great things, and instead of us reinventing the wheel, I really appreciate you kind of taking a look out there to see what was offered and look for opportunities of how to move forward, and I think this is a great step forward.
I can concur with that. In the memo you outlined all the great reasons to move forward with it, and not the least of which is the Cornerstone Board of Directors, which has a good speak in real estate equity, which is something that we as a tax board don't necessarily, some of us have more than others, but we don't necessarily have. So I think, to me, it's just a perfect match.
Thank you very much. So, Jacob, I appreciate this. I think it's worth the effort of, moving forward, at least continuing to do due diligence. It'll be interesting because you have more of a public entity coming together with a nonprofit, and I'll be curious what the lawyers also think about the whole process as well. But I think with this, with my experience in especially on the housing development side, it's to the point really where groups like ours, HACSA, a group like Cornerstone, they're just in a much better position to deal with affordable housing. The private sector, it just doesn't pay out the way you'd want it to from a bidding process. So I think the more that we can leverage like this, I think it's a really great idea. So I appreciate this. This is really nice thinking, and but like I said, sometimes, the details coming from the lawyers, you never know at that point in time, but I'm pretty confident that this could be a nice marriage. So appreciate the forward thinking on this.
I'd also like to jump in and say something nice about this possible partnership. First and foremost, both organizations are very well respected, and I think that getting a partnership between them formally is moving in the right direction. I also think that you've phrased it right to say this is a due diligence process, and that somebody mentioned to me the other day, the phrase, the devil is in the details, and there's always a devil. Okay, and so I don't know if there is a devil.
But you're an attorney.
Yeah, exactly. So, in fact, there was a lawyer that said that to me, that they should amend that devil in the details to say there's almost always going to be a devil. So I think that we don't know what that is. One that occurs to me that you might want to bring up in the course of this continued due diligence is that public agencies like ours often have requirements for contracts with their employees, and they have additional requirements in contracts that they issue with other people than private nonprofits that are not burdened by the same amount of federal and state regulation. So that's a culture clash between our board, their executive leadership, our executive leadership. That's a clash that isn't always easily resolved. Now, the great thing about this is you've got some really talented people on all sides, and if there's a way to work through that kind of clash, if that exists, then keep going with it. I do think that you should be, with emphasis on the due diligence, that we like the partnership, the idea of a partnership. We like the board is certainly impressed with their board, impressed with their commitment to issues connected with making better, safer, more affordable, more accessible housing. All of that is really great, and I think that we'll hope that there won't be any devils in any details.
So I'll just mention that the trend has been for certain services to become partnerships between government entities and a nonprofit. And in fact, we've had to move a couple of our government entities outside of Lane County recently just to adhere to federal law. Kids First is a prime example, where the new Justice Reinvestment Grant said it has to go to a nonprofit, and Kids First was actually a piece of Lane County, so we had to spin them off into a nonprofit to be able to grant them the victim services funding through the Justice Reinvestment Act. Very similar with Lane Workforce Partnership and the changes that came through federal law on workforce partnership. So there is precedent and contracting and past, mixing of government and nonprofits. So you may want to talk to some of those agencies about the devil. It came up in the details, and they may have some guidance for you. Both at Lane Workforce and at Kids First. So recent examples of working in those partnerships should be helpful.
Any further discussion? Okay, so all in favor of approving Order 16011201H, and that is approving further due diligence of a formal partnership between HACSA and Cornerstone Community Housing. Please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion passed unanimously. All right, so then we're going to move on to Order 16011202H in the matter of adopting the HACSA 401k Committee Charter, creating the HACSA 401k and authorizing the Executive Director to appoint members.
Good afternoon, everyone. HACSA has a very nice retirement plan for our employees. It's a 401k plan. It was approved in January of 1981. So I can't really tell you too much about how it was administered in the past. I can tell you that today we have a company called MassMutual. They are the ones who hold the money. They are actually, their function is called a record keeper because they keep track of how much money belongs to me versus Jacob versus all the other HACSA member employees. They have a very nice website where we can see how much our investments are making or losing. A few years before I came on board, I believe HACSA did an RFP for investment advisory services, and a company called Wells Fargo Advisors was the successful bidder. Wells Fargo Advisors are doing a wonderful job of performing a lot of the due diligence that is actually the responsibility of the board to make sure it gets done. So what we have done is hire this very capable company to do it. And they make sure that we're not offering any bad stocks or mutual funds for our employees to choose to put their money in. And we have a serious responsibility to analyze those funds. So Wells Fargo Advisors has also saved us and negotiated with Mass Mutual to save us money on the fees we pay, the administrative fees that come out of the participants' accounts. So in the next step of formal and professional retirement plan management, Wells Fargo Advisors has suggested to us that we formalize our investment committee. We've had a 3-person committee. It consists of me and 2 other two long-time employees and me, I guess I should say. And we meet twice a year with Wells Fargo, and they give us a beautiful report about how all the investments are doing and about the demographics of the people in the plan, and so on and so forth. So they have suggested to us that we formalize this committee, and that we formalize the way in which members are appointed to the committee, which up until now has been sort of, hey, we need a new committee member, does anybody want to do it? So we're going to formalize participation and membership in the committee, and we are going to have a charter that outlines exactly what this committee can do and what it can't do. So, for example, right now, PACSA pays 12% into this defined contribution plan on all of our salaries every month. That is not something that this committee could ever change. We would not, unilaterally say, we think it should be 25%. Nothing like that would happen. An example of a change that this committee could make is we could say that we are going to have employees put their own money in. We're going to default to a position where employees have a payroll deduction of their own money going in. They could opt out, but the fact is many people do not opt out of defaults. So it's sort of a nudge in the right direction. So just to make sure that you understand the distinction, the committee would not be able to do anything that would cost HACSA any more money, but we might be able to do some small things with the plan that would make the plan work better. So that's basically the gist of this. The board motion has you adopting the plan charter that calls out what the committee can do and what it can't do, formalizes the existence of the committee, and invests Jacob with the ability to appoint members to the committee.
Any questions?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve Order 1601-1202H, matter of adopting Nexus 401K committee charter.
Second, do we have any discussion to the motion? Commissioner Posey.
So just for the public's knowledge, all members of the committee who are receiving compensation from the agency, i.e. the employees that are appointed, shall serve without additional compensation. So just so it's clear that they're not getting paid to be on this committee. The only thing that they're eligible for is reimbursement of direct expenses. So.
Thank you. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Unanimously. Okay, so now I want to be, do we switch? Okay. Kind of move over a little bit. Okay. So now I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Farr, and he will be doing the applicants.
Item 6B is a discussion to meet applicants for the HACSA board appointed commissioner position. Just a little bit of background is Ms. Davidson's term is expiring, and it's our job, our duty to appoint a replacement for to appoint a replacement for Ms. Rivas' retirement. Just for the record, Ms. Rivas has applied for reinstatement or for continuation of her position on the board. That is the reason that I am taking over as the temporary chair of the meeting in order to avoid, I guess, a conflict of interest.
Right.
Mr. Fox.
Great.
So as everyone knows, obviously, there's a 7-member board that governs HACSA. 5 of the members are the Lane County elected commissioners, and we have 2 appointed commissioners. Those positions are currently filled by Shar and Hugh. As Commissioner Farr pointed out, Shar's term ends at the end of this month, on the 31st. And so after consultation with Commissioner Sorensen and Commissioner Stewart and Shar and Hugh, we decided it was in the best interest of the organization to advertise the opportunity. And we were excited to get 5 applications, and one of the applications, as I pointed out in my memo, the person didn't answer any of the questions, so I didn't forward that application to the board because the person didn't make the effort to provide enough information for us to make a decision on. And then, as you can see, we had 4 folks that actually took the time to fill out the application, one of whom is our current Commissioner and Board Chair. So we invited all 4 to come today and just to have an opportunity to introduce themselves. And then if any of the board members had any questions or clarifications, wanted to give you an opportunity to ask those. Of the 4, we only have 2 here today, obviously Shar and Dana, who we introduced at the beginning of the meeting. The other 2 were unable to be here for health-related reasons. They both want their applications to be taken at face value, and if anyone's interested in one of them becoming the appointed commissioner, we could.
I just wanted to know, this is informational to the HACSA board, but doesn't the Lane County Board of Commissioners appoint the appointed commissioner?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know we're closely with Lane County on that. So in terms of process, we would do the meet and greet / interview today. There would be a discussion amongst the HACSA board members today. If there was kind of a consensus among the group about a specific candidate, that could be communicated today, not decided upon. And then I will prepare a memo and order for the Lane County Board with a recommended applicant based on what I heard today. I will add in my own perspective in that memo as well, and that would be turned into Diana and Lane County in the next week, and it'll be back in front of the Lane County Board on January 26th.
I might suggest, for purposes of process, that we invite the 2 people that are here. Maybe they could come down to the end of the table and take, 10 minutes each, 5 minutes each, to introduce themselves, tell them why they'd like to be appointed, and then we could hear from them. In terms of additional effort on our part to sift through the people that aren't here, evaluate the people and what they say here, I don't see a big need to do that because the board's going to be meeting and can make a decision. That was my idea.
And an alternate idea that sometimes is employed in an interview phase is that each of the interviewees talk to us privately, and the other interviewees step out of the room. So at the board's pleasure. So, Hugh, what do you think?
Are we going to leave the television on? I don't know if we need to do it privately. I'm okay with that.
Any discussion? Otherwise, we'll just default to Commissioner Sorensen's recommendation. And just so folks know, we did obviously talk to Dana and Shar in advance, and what we asked them to do was very similar to what Commissioner Sorensen had communicated, and that's share a little bit about yourself, why you're interested in the position, and then an opportunity for the HACSA board members to ask any questions they have.
Okay, then I'll ask Mr. Woodall. Do you feel okay being in the room, both candidates talking at the same time? I'm guessing I'm sure. Then please take a seat.
I'm nervous about us talking for 10 minutes. Holy mackerel. I was told a couple minutes. Whatever.
Well, then by the 8 minutes of silence, that's fine.
Several of us take up the slack, don't we?
Okay. So please join us at the head of the table.
No laughing out loud over there.
Sit or you want me to stand?
Or should we be down here? Or?
Yeah, down at the end, so...
At the very end? Okay.
Oh, if you can fit there, yeah.
The other people can see a little.
Okay, come on over here. I'm sorry.
This is a bit irregular, having two interviewees talking together at the same time. Not something that I've ever done before. So I guess I just invite you to talk one at a time. And I don't know, Jacob, do I ask them to interact? Do they face away from each other? No. Mr. Woodall, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm here, and I'm glad to be here. I'm real honored to fill out that application and to give you guys some of the thoughts that I have. I do. I already see myself on the board of directors, so that's just a formality as far as I'm concerned. That's the way I look at it. So I'm fine. I just hope you guys are all the same.
Can you speak a little bit to your background?
I have the honor and privilege of being born with a disability called cerebral palsy. The challenge with being born with a disability is, in my mind, I'm not disabled because I've been this way all my life. So I've never been on the other side of the fence, so to speak. Okay. So when I graduated from high school in 1978, graduated in May, and in July I got my first Social Security check. And I've been on Social Security ever since. And to some extent, that's not a good thing, but to most extents, it's a pretty good thing, because I have a house, I have a roof over my head, so I don't have to worry about being homeless. And I enjoy I enjoy the fact that I live where I live, and I'm glad that I do that. Now, I can sit in the corner and suck my thumb and not do anything and complain about everything going on. That's called being reactive. But anybody that knows me knows that I'm proactive. Sure, I have a disability, but I'm still able to do things. And what I want to do is think about the things I'm able to do. So, as being a member of the board, allowing you guys and helping you guys to get your strategic forums going over this next year for the housings. If I can be a positive example and to assist you in doing that, why not? Okay? So that's what I look forward to. I'm also on the board of directors, Lane Independent Living Alliance. We have a board meeting today at 1:30. I called them up and said, hey, I got this meeting I got to be to at 2 o'clock. And they said, okay, fine. I've been on their board of directors twice. And I went to a symposium they had, and then they turned around and they asked me to be on the board of directors. So, of course, I said yes. And then my mom passed away in October, so I didn't go to the board of directors meeting that month. And next thing I know, I'm the treasurer. Right, so I don't know what's going to happen next month. They might ask me to go and be with, do something else. But it's my privilege and my honor to do that as an American citizen and giving back to the community. I see myself doing the same thing here. It's giving back to you guys, helping you guys, and saying thanks for allowing me to live in public housing. Been there for 10 years, and they like me. They haven't kicked me out or anything. I passed all the inspections, and So So that's the way I look at that. Let's see. Lila Board, I was also on the Right Able Board of Directors. But when I moved from Olive Plaza to McKenzie Village, I had to give something up, so that's what I gave up. A lot of you know about the Relay for Life program. I was on a member of that for 8 years, so I just feel like I have to give and give and give and give, so that's what I do. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, Mr. Woodall. I'll ask to the board any questions for Mr. Woodall.
Thanks for applying. When I applied, I was the only person who applied, and I think people know that this is kind of a bit of a difficult job, and so I'm really grateful. When I saw your application, I thought, this is really, really good. I'm glad that you applied. And I love the part about being on Lila's board because I have such an enormous respect for that. So I know you know boards, and I don't know if you know. If you were on this board, you would be exactly the same as any other commissioner. Same rights and responsibilities. Do you have any real problems with no. Let me rephrase that a little bit. I really don't have any questions because I have a sense that I talked to you before we started for about 15 minutes or so, and I have a sense that you would be a very good member for this board.
Thank you. I just hope you guys agree with them so we can get started.
Well,
that's fine.
And let me think, I don't know what's going to happen as far as the voting and all that goes, but I hope, having looked at this, I hope you will consider staying active. If you are on board, good, and if you're not, Haxley has a lot of other different opportunities for volunteering.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I'm very aware of that, yes.
Richard Sorensen.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for applying for the position and also for telling us a little bit about your background. I also wanted to comment on your membership on the board at Lila. That is a great agency in this community, and anytime that organization says something to the larger community, I think people ought to pay attention to it. I think it's a really well-run organization, and I'm really glad to hear of your involvement in it. One thing I would ask about your own background is, have you been to many of our meetings before, many of these HACSA board meetings?
Yeah, it's real hard for me to answer this question because I have to say no, but I never knew about the board. Okay, so if I would have known about the board, I probably would have come in.
Well, one thing that I think would strengthen your application would be to come to the board meetings, to watch us.
Sure.
And sometimes we have public comment at the beginning of our meetings, so people that have a perspective on some item on our agenda can give their perspective. And that would be something that, in the event you weren't chosen this time, you could learn more about what the board does and learn what it does and learn more about what the board members do. It's not a requirement.
Right.
The Lane County Board of Commissioners can appoint any two residents of HACSA to the board.
Correct.
Including you right now.
Mm-hmm.
But the Board of Commissioners will be meeting later to make a selection on who goes into this position.
Well, one of the things, I'm a member of the self-sufficiency program, and when I talked to Mira, because she's my counselor at this time, that's one of the things that I thought, well, gosh, I've never been to the board meetings. I don't really know what to do. And my feeling when I thought about that was, well, look, okay, Lila's board of directors twice, helping, get that courthouse thing going. So I thought, well, maybe some of that will help me out.
It will.
Okay? And then the other thing I thought of was, well, gee, you know, a lot of people nowadays aren't getting really into this kind of thing, so there might not be a lot of people that I have to worry about. But that's out of my control, too. So I just figured I'd show up, do the best I can. Excuse me. Oh, do the best I can, and then just let the cards fall really well.
Very good.
Thank you so much. Anything else I can help you with?
Further questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Woodall.
Sure.
Ms. Rivas.
So yeah, it's kind of hard because you all already know me, but I just want to, I think I'll just do it this way. I have enjoyed serving this 4 years. I have learned a tremendous amount. I felt very respected by all of you. And I have also made some great, I'm trying to think of the word I want to use, partnerships and work groups. We're right in the middle of the HACSA Cornerstone Strategic Alliance work group, which I've been a part of from the not the beginning, but the beginning of the work group, I guess. And one of the reasons I don't want to stop right now is because it just seems like in the last year and a half, out of the whole 4 years, all these things, including the HACSA Cornerstone thing, sort of started to take place. And so I'm right in the middle of being on all these different committees and work groups, and I'm not finished, and I hate not finishing what I've started, also, we're really, the Home Matters Advocacy Grant, we didn't get the Maya Memorial Trust Grant this year for that, but I have talked with Jacob and Michelle, and really we're trying to figure out a way that we can still do that advocacy and getting a group of strong resident leaders to advocate for affordable housing. So that's still in the works, and just started the Healthy Homes program. Still on the CAC and the RAC, still on the RAB, which we just are starting to completely redo and strengthen, and it's been going pretty well, I think, since we had the retreat and stuff. So I'm really committed to this mission and to the people that we serve, and my work here is not done, and in many cases has really just begun. And so, I don't know. I've just truly begun to understand this complex network of housing and services providers, and I would like to use my experience from the past 4 years to continue on the path I've started. I wrote it down because I always get nervous and then forget to say things.
Any questions for Commissioner Stewart?
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to thank Char serving in the vice chair position this last year and getting to work with you. I appreciated the fact that you knew my phone number and you didn't hesitate to call if you had a question or a concern, and I also appreciate the fact that you live in Florence. That's a long ways from here, and I think to my knowledge you've made all the meetings, except maybe one you were sick or there was a legitimate excuse. So I appreciate the fact that your commitment to this board, this body, what you add to it, and your involvement. As you stated, there's many other things that you found yourself being a part of that you really are a positive contributor to those items. So I just wanted to thank you for, I think, doing a very good job.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Steve?
I too don't have any questions. I just want to take this opportunity to thank you. When I came on this board for the second time, you've been an enormous resource. There have been a lot of questions and confusions, including the last meeting, which I'll get to, thank you. I'm grateful for your time on board.
Thank you.
So you brought up something thanks for reminding us, Hugh, that you were the only applicant.
Yeah.
And, so this is actually pretty impressive. that four and 2 are here today, and so this is actually very impressive. And so I think that I think having a strong interest like that in HACSA is very beneficial. So I really want to say to thank you both of you for, obviously, Shar, you're here because you're on the board now. But thank you, both of you, for being here. I really appreciate it. But I would agree. I mean, whomever we choose, what I'm hopeful, I think you brought that up, is that whomever we choose, the person that's not chosen or the 3 not chosen, that somehow they would still remain involved and active, whether it's PACSA, but also some of our affordable housing issues. They're so significant. And I think you see that right now. I believe that we may be looking at a major affordable housing package coming out of this short session of the legislature. Somewhere, I think they're talking close to $60 million that will be coming out. So that's how important this is. So I appreciate both of you very much. And I think it's fantastic.
Which we all know Multnomah County gets 59.5.
Just about.
Well, thank you very much, both of you all, for subjecting yourself to this rigor. And the new year with HACSA is going to be Jacob's first year on the job, full year on the job, and already HACSA is changing. Already HACSA is moving into a new generation, and the new board, after this appointment, will be entering really a new realm of dealing with the issues surrounding not just HACSA-related issues, but Cornerstone, other nonprofits, and all housing issues in Lane County. So thank you very much. At this point, this was a discussion-only item, just a chance to meet the applicants. We don't have on the agenda to actually engage in a discussion around the applicants unless the board would like to do so, in which case I would ask the applicants to leave the room. Otherwise, we can just say thank you, and I'll turn the meeting back over. So any desire at this point to discuss the applicants today?
I think it would be helpful for me to have a brief conversation without the applicants here, so I draft a memo that meets the word approval.
Excellent. Then, Mr. Woodall, you're certainly welcome to leave the building if you'd like. Sure, you need to come back to convene the meeting. Okay. So also, not to convene the meeting, but to adjourn the meeting. So, at your discretion, you can come back after we ask you to leave, or you can leave for the day.
Well, I guess I'll just stick around, and if Char's going to be here, I might as well be here too. Okay. If that's all right with her.
If you're both comfortable, you could take seats in the lobby outside.
All right.
If you prefer to sit in my office, you can do so.
No. Thank you for your time, folks. I appreciate it. It was really nice to meet you all. Have a good afternoon.
We'll see you in a few minutes. Thank you. Then I will open the floor for discussion. Jacob, would you like to lead on?
Yeah. The advice I got from Commissioner Sorensen and Stewart, I think, and Commissioner Massengill was good advice, and that's to reach out and see how many folks are available and stepping up into advocacy or leadership positions. And I'm happy with the 4 applications that we got. But what I wanted to propose, I guess, for purposes of discussion is, I think there's a role for Dana to play, but I don't think that he has the same experience and community connections that Char brings to HACSA board. My intention would be to draft a memo for the Lane County board that proposes that Char be appointed as the appointed commissioner for the next board.
Discussion?
Sure. As I just read the various applications, I kind of had them ranked, 1 through 4, and it was interesting. The top 2 were actually the 2 that showed up. I actually had Dana, because of his experience on the Lila board as one of my. But it's hard to beat. Char's got 2 letters of recommendations from 2 people that I have great respect for, Richard Herman and Rick Yessen. And I've known Rick for a long time, since he was one of my fellow LCC board members appointed to the LCC Budget Committee when I first met Rick, and he was just the chief financial officer of Peace Harbor, not the CEO. So I've known him for a long time, and I've met Richard Herman a long time back, and I was working with Gene Tate and other people when before it was Cornerstone. It had the other name, Metro Affordable Housing. So I've known both those folks a lot, and I think having those letters of recommendation from there shows the community connection that Shar has. And I really appreciate the fact that we're getting somebody from West Lane County that far out that's shown the willingness and the ability to make the trip to come to meetings and represent that rural perspective of affordable housing, particularly in an area that has a real difficulty with affordable housing, which is the Florence area, and workforce housing in general is very difficult to find down there. So I would agree with the recommendation that we move something to the Board of Commissioners versus the tax board with her name.
Further discussion?
I don't know, because I don't get voted. I agree. I think it's clear here in this particular case. I want to speak just for a second about procedure. Originally, I was on board the first time, as I remember, there was an existing board member and several other people, and I was chosen to be on the board over the existing board member. And so what I'm saying is, I like the idea of sort of a competition of people showing up and saying, here I am, and then it's a little bit uncomfortable and everything else, but I think it works out better for everybody. We just don't sort of appoint something. Even though we have such a strong candidate in Shar, and she has been, I'm not kidding, a tremendous resource to me.
I think that the AXA board either should make a recommendation to approve Shar, or should just have a discussion and don't need to make a recommendation. I think that the if we're going to have the AXA board take a vote on this, then I think we have to have Ms. Rivas to come back, because she's a member of the AXA board, and I don't think that's necessarily a good idea. I think it's better to have the Board of Commissioners do this. Now, there's two ways to get on this board. You said it's a difficult process to go through and be interviewed and have the Board of Commissioners appoint you. That's one way to get on this tax board. Another way is to run for the office of Lane County Commissioner. I can assure you that is a much more difficult way to get on this board.
So agreed.
Yeah. So I think if we don't have to make a decision, we don't have to make a decision. It's not the tax board decision.
Yeah, I would have to agree that we really shouldn't make a formal decision here, other than I think we should give Jacob enough sense of the board that he can prepare an order for the Board of Commissioners to Diana and Steve.
Thank you. I actually was going to listen to Hugh and get Hugh's sense, and part of it, I have a lot of respect for Hugh, and I think that was pretty nice of you to say, and obviously you mean it, that she's been a real great resource, and I've been very impressed with her. And it's all, I don't care what kind of board it is, it's nerve-wracking when, hey, you're going to be chair, here's a gavel, good luck. But I think she reaches out to whomever's our vice chair on this board, which is obviously a commissioner, just for guidance. But I just want you to know, I think she did an outstanding job as our chair, and I was really, because it can be challenging and daunting anytime you're doing this for the first time, and especially with a more formal board like this. So, very impressed, and I agree, she is a great resource, and I found that to be, just talking with her over this past year, she's an excellent resource. So appreciate your thoughts.
Yeah, I too, I wanted to say thank you. Been a commissioner for 11 years, and the process is always a little bit different, it seems. It wasn't until I think we made some bylaw changes to the AXA board that typically what happened was the chair of the Board of Commissioners was the chair of this body, and the vice chair was vice chair. And I think we made some great changes in allowing the appointed individuals to be able to chair and have more of a role, to feel like hopefully you feel like you're wanted to be here and have an equal role. And so that being said, I know that it was difficult. Char stepped up to the plate, and I think she's done a good job being a representative and the chair of this body. And I felt it was important. I've always felt in the 11 years that we serve together with the appointed individuals, and I look to the appointed individuals to give comments, and that's why my recommendation to Jacob was that even though the Board of Commissioners formally adopts the recommendation, I felt that it was important to be inclusive in this process and look to you. So I appreciate your involvement and your thoughtful comments.
And I'll agree. Thanks you for being so frank about it.
Oh, and I want to say right up front, when I was on board the last time, I really did feel like a second-class board member. When we could vote on certain things, but we couldn't hold certain jobs, and it made for an incredibly efficient board. I have never seen a more efficient board than the old Haxa board, because the Lane County voters elected 5 of the members, didn't have to have any kind of selection, and whoever was the chair of the Lane County Commissioners became chair of the Haxa board. But I love the change that, I love to have Charlene chair again, but I'm also open to some sort of return of sometimes Lane County Commissioner being chair. As far as I know, that's not an automatic. It has to be one of the residents. So I'm loving the change. I think it's a very good thing.
And I'll just point out that Char drives up from farms to these meetings, and I can only remember her missing one of them, and I think it was because of a flood, perhaps. So it's not only does she make it for these meetings, she makes it for the CAC meetings and the RAC meetings. And I know from at least one member of the CAC who thinks that Char is just primo. I think, based on everything I've heard, just from my experience and from other experience, and what she said today, her work isn't done. Let's let her finish her work. So, with that, I think I'll take everybody's recommendation, Jacob, and suggest that you make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. At this point, I'll call it a Thank you.
Right in the phone box, so we can say...
Yeah, that's right. You can watch a replay.
I always like to double check that.
And I will turn the meeting back over to the chair.
Thank you. Do you have an agenda in front of you? We don't have anything else.
No, that's it. We're at that part right
We're at that part right there?
Other business, I think.
Oh, actually, is there any other business? All right. Then,
well, I think just before we go, you'll be able to, if you choose to watch the conversation that we just had. And I would just point out that the director is Mr. Fox is recommending that you be reappointed for an additional term, and I believe that was the comments reflected that. I wanted to thank you, Mr. Wooden, for being here today, and I hope that I think Mr. Fox has said that there's opportunities to kind of plug you in and use your desire to help and give back, and I think that there's lots of ways to do that, and I hope that we improve our communication system so that you know that these meetings take place, and you also are aware of opportunities to apply again for this board. I believe you have assets and a lot of things to bring to the table too, and I hope that you're not discouraged and that you continue to be engaged and offer your expertise. I really appreciate that.
I just wanted to thank you also for applying and coming here and making a good presentation. I also wanted to say that improving communication between WILA and this board is important. And so maybe I'll agree with Commissioner Stewart on thinking about ways to stay involved, one of which is to come to our meetings, communicate with us, give us your perspective on what we're doing, and that'll put you in line for appointment to this board down the road if you still want to be considered.
Well, I just want to thank you for putting that out there, so that I know that you guys are, that this position came open. I know another position's going to come open in 2 years. So, 2 years from now, I'm sure that unless I'm out of the Family Self-Sufficiency Program, which I kind of hope to be out of, by the way, that's one of my goals. But if I am in a position where I can reapply to the board, you know that I will do that. Because if nothing else, at least I got to know you guys, and that helps me to increase my circle of influence. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Mr. Morrow, before you leave, I'd like to point out, you sat here through the strategic plan portion of the meeting. You know there's a lot of work ahead of us this year. You know
yes, I do.
And I would hope and expect to see you in this room with regularity.
Yes. So, when is the next meeting will be in February on the second Tuesday at 9 o'clock in the morning, correct?
You nailed it. I should mark that on my calendar.
Well, Liza's Board of Directors meeting is on the second Tuesday of the month at 1:30 in the afternoon, from 1:30 to 3:30. So, I'll just make that Tuesday board day. So perfect. I'll be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Really quickly, I think your suggestion, your comment about residents perhaps don't really know a lot about the board, we can work with that and go with that and ask perhaps that every resident, pretty much every resident gets a newsletter if there's a little bit of more publicity within the newsletter saying, here's the board, here's where they meet, and here's how you can see them. I happened to miss the last meeting, and I was able to watch it over the web, so we could perhaps put that in the newsletter for folks.
But what's interesting about those newsletters?
What?
Okay, I get one every month, and I go through it and I read it, and on the back page it always has the word search. So I always do the word search. But a lot of the people do not read them. They just throw them away, I mean, it's really a sad thing to say, but, and I don't want them to not do it, but that's what happens to a lot of them. A lot of people, was that in there? Oh, I didn't see that. Oh, that's because I didn't read it. So, yes, I do read them, and I appreciate you guys' time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Lila was, okay, yeah, you're going to that board meeting? Okay. See you in February. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'd like to thank you all for giving me this opportunity, and I guess we'll just go ahead and adjourn the meeting. It's been late.
All right.